Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Regional Director, my name is Arne Petter Sanne, and a warm welcome to this technical briefing co-chaired by myself on behalf of Norway and Dr. Natasha Sopardi Muscat on behalf of the WHO Regional Office for Europe on the Oslo Medicine Initiative, access to effective, safe, novel, high-priced medicines, a new vision for collaboration between the public and private sectors. The Transparency Resolution from the World Health Assembly in 2019 triggered the Oslo Medicine Initiative to frame our discussions towards and during the high-level meeting in Oslo in 2022. Transparency is one of the key words together with solidarity and sustainability. The platform for dialogue and collaboration between the private and public sectors created by the Oslo Medicine Initiative will explore if more transparency can lead to more solidarity and to more sustainable health systems and a more sustainable pharmaceutical industry in favor of patients in the European region and beyond. In most cases, transparency contributes to well-functioning markets and trust. I would now draw your attention to the Slido function through which we invite you to submit your questions as we go through the session via the hashtag OMI21. In the interest of time, these will be curated and we will address as many as we can during the final discussion. We promise to leave as much time as possible. I would now hand over to the Regional Director, Dr. Hans Kluge, for a few introductory remarks. Dr. Kluge, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Arne Petter, and distinguished speakers from member states, representatives of the European Union, patient organizations, pharmaceutical industry, colleagues. Good afternoon, good evening. I thank you warmly for connecting to the Region Committee's side event dedicated to the Oslo Medicines Initiative, which focuses on improving affordability of high-priced novel medicines. Access to medicines is an integral part of the right to health and well-being. The Sustainable Development Goals place it high on the health agenda, alongside universal health coverage and access to quality health services. In the health system paradigm, medicines enable the health service delivery. Together with other building blocks, they form a foundation for effective functioning of health systems and help to ensure that patients and societies get the expected clinical outcomes. This foundation must be steadfast and reliable. But what does it mean in practical terms? It needs to ensure that medicines are appropriate quality, available and affordable to patients, because without those, it will not be possible to attain universal health coverage. It is not news that in our region, many health systems are struggling with growing health expenditures, with medicines driving out-of-pocket payments in many countries. Our Barcelona team has now data in 33 countries, and there is an average in the population going from 0.2% to 10.8%, the percentage of households who are being pushed into poverty because they can no longer afford to pay for innovative medicines. Novel products are either launched there substantially later because of this or not launched at all in some parts of the region. At the same time, when we speak about novel products, we must keep in mind that innovation is a resource-intensive process and needs to be appropriately incentivized and rewarded. We acknowledge this. So balancing these issues is what the Oslo Medicines Initiative is about. A new paradigm to ensure sustainable access, affordability, and reward for innovation, particularly for unmet health needs. And the WHO Regional Office for Europe is ready to be the safe, ethical environment where the parties can come together and explain their positions and build consensus. The SDGs invite us to form public-private partnerships and ensure industrial development, which will help to remove obstacles on the road towards universal health coverage. It is important to emphasize from the start that although we come from different perspectives, be it a payer for health services and medicinal products, or a private sector developing these products, there is one essential aspect that we have in common, and that can help us to overcome the differences. This is the commitment to improving the health and well-being of patients and our communities. When we approach access and affordability from this perspective and keep the patients and people at the center of our work, I am certain we shall be able to find viable and sustainable solutions representing what I call a win-win for all. The Oslo Medicines Initiative offers a platform where such solutions can be elaborated, discussed, fine-tuned, and translated into concrete projects, paving the way to their implementation. WHO, as a neutral convener, will facilitate this work and ensure that every constructive proposal is being heard, deliberated, and considered in finding the way forward. I take this opportunity to genuinely thank the government of Norway, who lent its name to the initiative and who supports it financially and truly inspires its work. Partnership built around the three principles underpinning the Oslo Medicines Initiative, namely solidarity, transparency, sustainability, can make a difference because they create an open, trustful environment conducive to change. And we know such partnerships are at the origin of the effective solutions. COVID-19 pandemic is the most recent example of this. Governments, international organizations, academicians, private sectors, communities and volunteers joined efforts to develop, manufacture and deliver vaccines in record time. This is also and should be a great source of inspiration. I invite you to take the opportunity of today's discussion and of other events under the auspices of the Oslo Medicines Initiative to work out the solutions acceptable for all. I would like to wish you fruitful deliberations over the next hour and a half, and now we will look first together to a short explainer video about the Oslo Medicines Initiative. Thank you.
If you're ill and you need medicine, you should be able to get it. But high costs can make this virtually impossible. Safe and affordable access to medicines is key to universal healthcare, and sadly, progress towards that goal has stalled. But maybe there's a new way. COVID-19 has shown us that different stakeholders can come together to find a fair solution to a global health problem. We've learned that ethics and solidarity can guide our path. That's why we've launched the Oslo Medicines Initiative, a new, neutral partnership where governments and pharmaceutical companies can work together to improve access to effective, high-cost medicines. The new initiative is founded on three principles. Solidarity, because there's strength in numbers. All stakeholders, governments and private companies need to agree on how to make fair access a reality. Transparency, because we need to build trust. And that happens when decisions on costs and access to medicines are made openly. And sustainability, so that we can build ethical and sustainable health systems that will last for generations to come. Together with our partners, we'll be working to put the needs of patients first, expanding access and building a fairer future. A future where everyone has access to the medicines they need. Find out more on our website.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kluge, for highlighting the importance of this initiative and for your strong support. With the regional office hosting this initiative, I would like to hand over to my co-chair, Dr. Asopardi Muscat, to briefly outline the WHO's involvement and to then introduce our distinguished panel. Natasha, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anne-Petter, and good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining us. And I would like first to start by sharing a few slides that complement the video that we have just seen. So can I have the next slide, please? And as you have heard, the initiative is based on 3 key principles that are critical for us to be able to move towards achieving universal health coverage and, more broadly, make progress towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The first one, solidarity, because everyone counts. Transparency, because decisions on pricing need to be made openly to build trust. And sustainability, so that we can promote sustainable industries and sustainable health systems. Why now? I think the initiative was actually conceived prior to the outbreak of COVID-19, but over the past months, the rationale has actually become even stronger. It's a time to really reflect on the current business models and build new collaborations, as we have seen happening in the past months. An opportunity for stakeholders to really come together and improve the system for everyone, very much in keeping with the commonly accepted ethos of building back better. We also must realize that in spite of this hiatus of the past months, our commitment to make progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, time is running out and we need to speed up our efforts. And of course, the transparency resolution was the starting point that catalyzed this initiative. What are our objectives? We need to start by reshaping the political discourse. And I note that we are already beginning to reshape the narrative together. Secondly, we need to be realistic and really think about implementing pragmatic, step-by-step solutions that can demonstrate that we are making progress and help to continue to build trust and confidence as we move forward together. And of course, finally, that is the way we create the partnerships to bring about this movement for change. In terms of what has been happening, the initiative was actually launched at the European Health Forum Gastein already almost a year ago, and we will be returning in a few days' time to take stock. What have we done this year? We have already launched 2 consultations, member state consultation and 2 sets of non-state actor consultations, because we need to really build stakeholder engagement. Today, we come to you here with the side event at the regional committee. We will go also to the European Health Forum Gastein once again to take stock and to see how we move forward. And in autumn, we have a series of webinars planned, and we will keep you informed, because this is where we will be presenting a set of background papers that have been commissioned and where we start taking the discussion forward. This will lead us to come to a second round of consultations with member states and with non-state actors. And of course, next year, we are very much looking forward to holding a high-level meeting in Oslo, where our expectation is that we can come together and adopt an important statement that really shows how far we have come together and helps to chart the way forward. So just to share with you a summary of the initial round of consultations to date, the key issues that we have heard from you are affecting access to effective, safe, novel, high-priced medicines, are in terms of solidarity, the need to really strengthen cooperation and coordination. In terms of transparency, the need really to have support in galvanizing action also on the transparency resolution. And in terms of sustainability, we need to think carefully about sustainable procurement and pharmaceutical policies on the one hand, and strengthening our national ecosystems around access to medicines that, of course, comprise a series of steps in a chain, and that these all need to be strengthened in order to help us to achieve our goal. Thank you very much. And I now move to welcome our panelists for today. We have with us Bjørn Inge Larsen, the Special Representative on International Health of the Norwegian government, Momir Radulovic, the Executive Director for the Agency for Medicinal Products and Medical Devices from Slovenia, Alexander Komarida, Deputy Minister of Health from the Ministry of Health of Ukraine, Eda Lopato, the Head of Medicines Department in the Ministry of Social Affairs, Estonia, Nathalie Moll, Director General for the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations, Terkel Andersen, the President of the Board of Eurordis, Rare Diseases Europe, Milka Sokolovic, Director General of the European Public Health Alliance, and Sylvain Giraud, Head of Unit for Medical Products from DG Health and Food Safety of the European Commission. Let me thank you all very much for having made the time to join us, being broadly representative of the wide stakeholder base who we are engaging with. Can I remind you that you will have 5 minutes each for a brief intervention? And perhaps I would like to start right away by inviting Dr. Larsen. Dr. Larsen, I know that Norway is very committed to delivering innovative medicines to all its citizens. How does greater partnership with other stakeholders, as envisaged through this initiative, help you in that regard? Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Asapari Muscat, for that, and for your also for your fine introduction to the topic today. So, like you say, Norway is fully committed to delivering innovative medicines to all our patients that need them. We hope that partnership and engagement with other stakeholders can help us achieve this. We seek a dialogue with industry, patient groups, professional organizations, and others to find better solutions on how to improve access, and especially now to the novel and effective medicines for patients who need them. We believe that there should be a social contract between countries on one side and industry on the other side, where both sides are responsible for securing wide access for new and innovative medicines. If the industry agrees to this, that the contract is needed, there is a basis for dialogue to achieve a common goal, and that is to secure access, real access, to these medicines. If the industry is hesitant that a social contract is needed, of course, that will be an important signal to us as governments to take note of. Like Arne Petter rightly pointed out in his opening remarks, the Oslo Medicines Initiatives was established by the momentum generated by the adoption of the transparency resolution from the World Health Assembly in 2019. Norway was encouraged to see the strong support for increased transparency in the pharmaceutical market from member states. We recognize that some countries disassociated themselves from the resolution, and we respect that. But still, the adoption was a strong signal that many governments share a common problem. Patients are not getting access to the medicines that they need. The potential health effect from new medicines is not fully utilized, and this leads to a loss of public health. This used to be a problem on pharmaceutical products in low-income countries and maybe lower middle-income countries. But today this has expanded, and now also high-income countries are affected by this. The fact that a country like Norway, which is a high-income country, does not see ourselves able to secure access to all the medicines that are coming to the market because of the prices presented, it's to us a sign that this market does not work in favor of the patients. We are spending more than 10% of GDP, as many high-income countries are spending on health. Still, last year, Norway had to reject around 20% of the new medicines that we evaluated and considered as good medicines for patients due to the prices presented. This problem of access to novel effective medicines does not seem to be decreasing. And we register that the industry finds itself served with setting very high prices and reaching a limited number of patients. We understand that the industry needs to be profitable and sustainable, but the access must be improved. To us, as a country, health is not a commodity like any other. Transparent, but also lower prices will give industry the benefit of reaching out to more patients and therefore increase sales volumes. We will also like to have a dialogue with the industry to hear their view on how to improve access in different groups of countries, both high-income countries and low-income countries. In addition to exploring the possibility of formulating a social contract or any other measure between countries and industry, we would also like to explore ways to measure access. For instance, the proportion of a defined patient group getting access to a new medicine and treatment. Then we could monitor progress and changes over time and compare different geographical areas. Our common goal should be to bring therapies to patients who need them. There is no value in a medicine that sits on the shelf. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Larsen, for clearly outlining your views. And also, I would really like to thank you for your guidance and support during this initiative, which is tremendously appreciated from our end. And moving now to Slovenia, Mr. Radulovic. Slovenia currently holds the presidency of the Council of the European Union. We have been working closely over the past months, and I would like to ask you, what are Slovenia's medicine-related priorities, and is access to novel products currently challenging for Slovenia? Mr. Radulovic.
Thank you, Chair. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this important discussion. We need to foster a comprehensive, open, and transparent debate on paradigm shift in the pricing of medicines. I'm here as a representative from Slovenia, and Slovenia is a small country, and as a small market, we also face the constant challenge of accessibility we have to deal with. Clearly, this is also linked with the affordability. And having said that, I would like to reiterate our support as a co-sponsors of WHO Transparency Resolution from 2019, calling to improve transparency in pharmaceutical markets. Clearly, the Oslo Initiative and Fair Pricing Forum are important opportunities to foster these debates on new national pricing approaches leading to pharmaceutical price fairness. But to find these new ways, we all need to have the same understanding that medicines are not a normal commodity, but more a necessity. And we need to share interest that medicines are accessible to all patients that need them. In my view, there are several important elements that need to be addressed. And first, to restore the balance in pricing and reimbursement negotiations between governments, payers, and multinational pharmaceutical companies. Currently, there exists an informational asymmetry where the industry knows the product prices in all countries, but national payers do not have access to such data beyond their borders. Further, we need to increase the transparency how the price is set. And in particular, as a public servant, the public has the right to know what the share of public investment in the research and development of a certain product is. And I would see this as accountability for using public funds from the side of the private sector. And in order to cover the real costs incurred by companies and to reach transparent price setting for new innovative medicines or new indications, it should also incentivize companies' investments in R&D on in-house new molecules instead on excessively priced buyouts of other companies. And as we speak about equal patient access, we need also to change the paradigm of access and start to talk about equal outcomes. We need to strive for equal patient outcomes with medicinal products and, for instance, establish a minimal data set for high-priced medicines. For instance, like CAR-2T cell therapies, which would support pricing and reimbursement decision. Proposal would definitely be to have an indicative common minimal data set to facilitate these evidence-based decisions in the pricing and reimbursement. I'm sure many of you are aware of the AMI model on fair pricing, and it consists of R&D costs, number of patients, production and overheads, sales and medicinal products, and then to this we would add basic profit and innovation bonus to get to the fair price. But just in the summary, the status quo will not bring solutions. And I hope that my transparent views today will not be misunderstood as provocation, but rather as the opposite, as genuine motivation for action, as we need to change something. And without more transparency, I'm not sure we will not move much further, and access to medicines to patients that needs them can only be achieved by action, which we hope will also result from the Oslo initiatives. And last but not least, indeed, Slovenia currently holds the presidency of the Council of the EU, and in this framework, we would also like to stimulate some of the common action to support accessibility and availability of medicines. As COVID-19 pandemic has meant that we have been living in very uncertain times. And then yet this experience gives us the chance to look at the long-term health-related challenges from a different perspective. That is why the presidency focus has been on the areas where there may be a lack of commercial interest, such as in the case of antimicrobials or in the case of the repurposed generic and older medicines in oncology. So we proposed 2 policy briefs. We discussed this with the policy makers on the EU level. And so one policy brief was on improving access to essential antibiotics, and the other was done together with WHO. So repurposing of medicines in oncology as underrated champion of sustainable innovation. And to conclude, the fight against current global health crisis should be an incentive for EU to agree on collective approaches and assess possible EU joint solutions that can not only improve preparedness and response to cross-border health crises, but also better prevent and respond to shortages and improve the accessibility and availability of medicines to patients. In this way, building the European Health Union and joint solutions is also the opportunity to support member states in their role and responsibility for efficient organization and delivery of their health systems. And those discussions we aim to stimulate in our presidency focus. And with this, I give back the word to you, Chair. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Radulovic. And we really appreciate the leadership that Slovenia is taking in this area. We wish you all the very best with the remainder of your presidency. Dr. Komarida, can I turn to Ukraine now? How do you see this from your perspective? Do you face similar challenges in Ukraine? And are there specific areas you think that warrant our attention and that we haven't yet put sufficiently high on the agenda? Over to you, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you, Chair. Deputy Minister Kamarida, I apologize for his inability to take part today in the briefing because he has a planned meeting at the Prime Minister's office. Let me introduce myself. My name is Alexandra Kozlovska. I am Director General at the Directorate for International Cooperation at the Ministry of Health of Ukraine. And according to the Ukrainian state strategy for the implementation of the state policy of providing the population with medicines for the period until 2025, which was developed on the basis of WHO recommendations, the strategy of providing the population with medicines is defined as a political commitment for actions to ensure accessibility and rational use in Ukraine. Providing the population of medicines and increasing their availability have always been and will be an integral part of public health policy of Ukraine, which aims to create a patient-centered system as implemented in developed European countries. In 2020, our Ukrainian parliament has adopted the law of Ukraine aimed at increasing the availability of medicines, medical devices. The law provides for the possibility of concluding managed access agreements with holders of registration certificates for innovative medicines, including biological ones, on the territory of Ukraine at the expense of the state budget or local budgets to ensure the availability of such medicines for our Ukrainian patients. According to this law, MEA is a tool to increase the accessibility of Ukrainian patients to a rather narrow list of drugs, namely innovative drugs, provided that no generic drugs with the same international name, release form and dosages are registered in Ukraine. In world practice, the MEA procedure can be applied in case of uncertainties regarding comparative efficiency, safety, economic feasibility, and budgetary impact, which were established during the medical technology assessment. With the emergence of new high-cost technologies in the field of healthcare in Ukraine, there is also a need to create and implement a holistic system of drug selection, which would be based on the medical technology assessment of healthcare. The MTA system is already used in foreign countries in the process of selecting basic medicines for their rational use. To ensure the proper functioning of MTA in our country, the government of Ukraine adopted a resolution that defines the procedure for public medical technology assessment in Ukraine. It should also be noted that in order to ensure faster access to effective, new and expensive medicines of proper quality, Ukrainian legislation provides for a simplified state registration of original medicines for the treatment of socially dangerous diseases, as well as medicines with original molecules for the treatment of rare and cancer diseases that have been reported in countries whose regulators apply high-quality standards that meet the standards recommended by WHO. This initiative opens access to quality, safe, and effective medicines for Ukrainian patients. Also, I would like to underline that in order to provide treatment of critically ill patients in Ukraine with innovative drugs free of charge and to implement the constitutional human rights to life and health care for our citizens, the Parliament of Ukraine is currently considering draft law to regulate the provision of compassionate medicines to patients. Such mechanism already exists in other developed jurisdictions, including European Union, United States, and other developed countries. The adoption of this draft law will be an important step in addressing the access of critically ill patients of Ukraine to innovative treatment in the framework of programs to provide patients with compassionate medicines through the formation of effective and efficient mechanisms for regulating relations with these programs. In conclusion, I would like to underline our support of the Ukrainian government for Oslo initiative. We are grateful for WHO, for Norwegian government for their support, and we are ready to cooperate in this sphere. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Director General. Thank you, Alexandra, for joining us and for explaining what is happening in Ukraine and extending also your support to the Oslo Medicines Initiative. And I would now like to pass the floor to Estonia, where I would like to welcome Ms. Lopato. And I would like to ask you, what is your perspective on access to high-priced novel medicines, and what do you think the Oslo Medicines Initiative can do to help support you in this regard? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I hope you hear me. I thank the WHO Europe and the government of Norway for the co-hosting this event and for their leadership on this important topic. High prices of medicines are a major concern and a limiting factor in timely access to the necessary treatment and equal access to innovative therapies patients throughout Europe. Market launch of innovative medicines is often delayed in small markets, as supply of medicines is limited due to the lack of economic attractiveness and ability to pay. Many important areas for further work have been highlighted in the Oslo Medicines Initiative consultation report. We welcome its focus on practical steps needed. The pharmaceutical sector is a complex system with many factors influencing availability, accessibility, and affordability of pharmaceuticals. There are different and competing interests that need careful balancing. The pharmaceutical market is a global market, thus global solutions and agreements are needed. The pricing and reimbursement authorities often struggle with a lack of transparency about manufacturing prices and cost components of new medicinal products, as well as the lack of data on relative clinical and patient benefits of novel medicines, especially changes in quality of life. Facilitating transparency and making standardized and comparable information available to the decision makers is therefore of utmost importance. International analysis is needed on the effectiveness and visibility of different pricing and reimbursement models. A framework for differential or equity-based tiered pricing for novel medicines is definitely worth considering. And to conclude, we welcome the ambition of the Oslo Medicines Initiative to offer a platform for a new vision for collaboration between the public and private sectors, and innovative and effective pricing and reimbursement models are needed in order to ensure sustainable, equitable, and fair access to medicines to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lopato, and thank you also for highlighting, of course, the small country perspective too. I would like to remind our audience that if you have any questions that you wish to raise, you wish to pose to our speakers, who you have heard and who you will hear also in the second part of this session, please go to slido.com and enter the hashtag OMI2021 and type in your question or comment. With this, I would now like to return chairing duties back to my colleague Anne Petter in Norway.
Thank you, Natasha. I turn now to you, Ms. Moll. You represent the companies who deliver the innovative medicines behind our discussions and who moved so swiftly to deliver the COVID-19 vaccines, which are changing the course of this pandemic. What can the industry propose in terms of promoting sustainable access alongside sustainable innovation?
Thank you so much, Dr. Arne Petter, and I hope that you can hear me well enough. Very good. And thank you very much to you and to the WHO for organizing this meeting, which is very important. We as an industry really have welcomed the Oslo Medicines Initiative from the beginning, as you know, and I was very happy to take part in that launch event that Dr. Zappardi-Muscat mentioned at the European Health Forum Gastein 1 year ago, as well as various consultations meetings since then, including last week, in fact, in Copenhagen. Achieving access to medicines for all patients that need them is a joint ambition of the industry and society. That is why we make the medicines that we make. And our industry pipeline is highly innovative with many breakthrough therapies on many disease areas, but even the most fantastic innovation, as was already said, is of absolutely no use if it remains on the shelves. So we really welcome the opportunity of finding joint solutions to improve access in Europe. The first task at hand, as we've said before, should be really to understand very clearly the situation at a detailed level. Access to medicines varies a lot between different countries in the European regions for a large number of reasons, and the situation can also vary across different products or classes of medicines within the same country or region. We also need to separate between a medicine being available in principle in a country and all patients actually having access to it. So there are various levels of accessibility that we need to look into. And we need to develop a more detailed information and data on access to medicines in the region, including the reasons for unavailability and delays, so that we have the full picture. And then this would also help us to measure the success of this initiative going forward and identify the gaps where improvements are needed. As you know, FBI has already taken some steps in this direction. We publish every year our patient wait report showing how long patients have to wait for different medicines across the EU 27. But we're also exploring how to bring together even more detailed data sets that can be made available. And we are ready to put these pieces on the table as part of a joint effort to create that more transparency that many of you were mentioning before in this regard. We want to work together on tailor-made solutions to remove the various barriers that are being identified, that will be identified. For example, because of different levels of economic development, countries do not have the same ability to pay for innovation, which can lead, as we heard earlier, to access delays or lack of availability. Pharmaceutical companies are already trying to adapt to the local context when launching new medicines, but sometimes the policy and market environment create challenges. And this could be facilitated through some common principles, for example, around equity-based tiered pricing. Of course, and I heard this word being mentioned by Dr. Klug at the beginning, this would also require commitment from and solidarity between member states and other actors. Another issue is access and affordability challenges caused by breakthrough therapies that really represent a paradigm shift in how we treat patients. New highly advanced cell and gene therapies harbor the promise to replace a lifetime of regular medication for a chronic disease with a single or a one-off treatment that comes with a high upfront cost. Our health systems, including pricing and reimbursement systems, were not designed with this in mind. This is not what we have been dealing with until now. It is a revolution and requires new collaborative models to enable access to these revolutionary therapies, a revolution that needs another revolution. For example, outcomes-based schemes to track the effects of a therapy over time, to ensure that health systems and patients get the expected results, or staggered payment approaches that can distribute a high upfront cost over time. However, for these new approaches to be implemented requires the right regulatory environment as well as the skills and capacity, including for collecting high quality data that can be trusted by all partners. And the word trust came up a few times as well. Most of all, it has to also have, of course, the will from all parties. Also here, we believe that there's a benefit of working together, including by creating more transparency on which models are working best for which situations and which countries, and also to explore how data that is collected under a specific scheme could be beneficial for others in order to reduce duplication and administrative burden. These are some examples of areas where we can work together on solutions. And in the end, I think we need a range of policy solutions that work together to improve the access situation in Europe. There is no silver bullet. COVID-19 has shown us, as many of you have said, that investing in health is also to invest in our societies and economies and our joint future. Although the pandemic is far from over, there is now a light at the end of the tunnel and a clear road ahead, thanks to the innovation that vaccines and therapies and even just diagnostic brings, and also through the close collaboration between the private and public authorities. These vaccines do not only save lives, but they also make health systems more resilient and sustainable by saving limited hospital resources and reducing the burden on health professionals. We need to build on these learnings. I heard that you mentioned it, and it was really good to hear. And together we need to create that win-win solution or series of solutions that can ensure access to innovative medicines for all patients who need them, long-term resilient and sustainable healthcare systems that can make investment decisions based on good evidence, and an industry that is supported for innovation that benefits patients and societies and therefore can continue to innovate. I'm really looking forward to the continued dialogue with the Oslo Medicines Initiative in this spirit, and thank you again for including us.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Moll. The Oslo Medicine Initiative has from the outset seen the industry as an important partner, and your support is very much appreciated. Mr. Anderson, from your perspective, representing patients with rare conditions, do you think we can strike a balance between stimulating and rewarding innovation without having to strain member states' budgets?
It's a difficult question to answer, really. Of course, rare disease patients are rare, but rare disease patients taken into its total numbers is quite a considerable part of the entire population. The estimate is that rare disease patients constitute around 3.9% of the population in any country, which is far too many to be left behind. You could also see this question from a perspective of how we use our resources. Today, rare disease patients often have to undergo years of meandering to reach a proper diagnosis. So the question could rather be, are our healthcare system adapted to the needs, the unmet needs as it is now, of this vast community? The organization I represent, EURORDIS, Rare Diseases Europe, has a membership of 970 patient organizations from all over Europe. And we have diseases in that membership outnumbering 2,000. The total number of rare diseases is supposed to be larger than 6,000 diagnoses. Probably more closely to 8,000. And even though it affects small populations, it is evident that we have to take advantage of the fantastic innovation and progress made in science over the last years to actually meet the needs of these patient groups. There have been enormous strides forward to bring effective and really life-transforming therapies to rare disease patients over the last 20 years, where we have in the EU the orphan drugs legislation. Yet the job is by far not done. In a survey that we made among our patients representatives, we found out that only 6% have access to transformative therapy, where the great majority of patients only have access to only symptomatic treatment, not addressing the real complications of each of the diseases. And 1/3 may not have any relevant treatment at all. So rare disease patients are not on an equal footing with the general population or those suffering from more common diseases. And I think it's fair to say that rare disease patients should be given the necessary attention to be able to favor, to benefit from the progress that is being made in these years. That said, the 20 years of the orphan drug legislation that we have in the EU has led to the marketing of around 200 different products. So it's only a fraction of this vast community which can actually access therapies. And for those therapies which exist, the fact is that there are great disparities between countries as to the access to such innovative new treatments. And with the price tags that we see for new advanced therapies, it is likely that we will see even these discrepancies increase over the next years. So how do we address the unmet needs of this population? We cannot go on for another 20 years and not having really more progress than relatively that we've seen for the first 20 years of the legislation in the EU. We have to go further, and we have to make possible that these medicines can reach also less privileged countries than those who are members of the EU. So for that reason, we have tried to develop a number of recommendations, and we used the platform which was provided by the so-called Foresight study, the Rare 2030 study, to come together with stakeholder representatives to design new solutions which could actually improve the situation. And one of the most essential outcomes is that we need to establish an entire ecosystem which can respond to the unmet needs of rare disease patients, not just to see the crowding of different new therapies in a very few number of therapy areas, but actually to see that we have developments across the board, and especially for those rare diseases where the new developments can actually bring to genetic diseases a lot of benefit. So we welcome the WHO Europe and Oslo Medicines initiative, and we think it can contribute to develop a research, development, and delivery ecosystem for rare disease therapies in Europe, in which efforts both at local, regional, national, and international levels remain concerted for success. This ecosystem must be co-designed both by public and private sectors, and we see patients as partners in this process, not only in research and development, but also when it comes to discussing regulatory assessment and appraisal processes. And we hope that the initiative will develop conditions for an agile drug manufacturing capacity to withstand critical situations such as drug shortages, market withdrawals, and expiry of patents. We also hope that the ambition will be to strengthen pan-European cooperation in pricing and negotiations. And we suggest that this could be done by setting a European table of negotiations to negotiate and procure therapies supported by a switch to differential pricing, and also make use of joint procurement, as is already taking place in some countries. And we hope that this would ensure also local legal clarity to facilitate access to treatment across borders to approved therapies. Finally, we hope that the ambition also will be to develop a common European methodology to set a fair price based on a transparent, dynamic, mutually constructed approach to match research and development with the unmet needs and healthcare priorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson, for your valuable input and that you support the initiative. Thank you very much. I invite Dr. Sokolovic to take the floor and give us the perspective of the European Public Health Alliance, who have a long-standing interest in collaboration with stakeholders in promoting equitable access to affordable medicines in Europe. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Sanne. Honorable chairs, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to convey people's views on the access to effective, novel, high-priced medicines. I'm indeed Milka Sokolovic. I'm addressing you today as Director General of EFA, the European Public Health Alliance. And for those of you who have not encountered us before, EFA is the leading public health stakeholder in Brussels, involved in advocacy towards the European Union institutions and agencies, as well as the WHO. With our versatile civil society membership from the WHO European region, we advocate across issues of public health, including policies for better and affordable medicines. Now, as a way of disclosure of any potential conflict of interest, we receive no funding from pharmaceutical companies, and we solely represent the views of civil society. While obvious and mentioned by many, it cannot be stressed enough that the pandemic brings to the forefront issues of equity, solidarity, human rights, and social justice, especially for the most vulnerable of our societies. And they lie at the heart of this debate on universal access to medicines, and they are at the very heart of our work in EFA. Undeniably, COVID-19 illustrates and emphasizes the urgent need to further increase transparency in pharmaceuticals and to strengthen collaboration amongst member states. We have, as suggested by Dr. Kluge, already seen examples of the benefits of increased transparency. For instance, the very experience of negotiating an EU-wide price for the COVID-19 vaccines creates a new dynamic for joint procurement, which by its own design brings about more price transparency than the confidential discounts. It should be noted, however, that the push for transparency must go well beyond the transparency of prices. Transparency in costs, as well as in funding to support the research and development of health products, is also crucial. Apart from that, price transparency per se applies differently to countries and regions, depending on their negotiating position, purchasing power, their experience, and their know-how. In other words, for the WHO Europe region and its members, a one-size-fits-all solution would potentially be counterproductive. Nevertheless, the implementation of the WHO Resolution 72/8 on transparency offers a comprehensive inventory of action, and yet it requires a strong political will and support and international coordination. Pharmaceutical systems are complex and difficult to comprehend, and we should therefore not lose sight of what matters in medicines policies. And what matters includes, firstly, timely and affordable access to safe and effective medicines. Secondly, meaningful, needs-driven, patient as opposed to drug-centric innovation by means of commensurate incentives and rewards. And thirdly, sustainable health system as a pillar of social equity. In what matters, again, transparency is a crucial step towards enabling the new vision for collaboration between the public and the private sectors, as envisaged by the Oslo Medicines Initiative. Indeed, the Oslo Medicines Initiative paves the way for a frank, comprehensive discussion on how to rebalance pharmaceutical systems in the face of ever-increasing prices for medicines and vaccines and the debatable innovation. And to this end, in the coming months, it will be important to make progress on the following fronts. First, to map, track, and coordinate the multi-layered public support that goes into biomedical research and innovation. Since public guarantees and flexibilities are used to de-risk the R&D process, The public needs to get a fair share of the returns, but also to have a clear say in steering the innovation. This, for instance, can be achieved through non-inclusive voluntary licensing and affordable pricing guarantees. Second, to foster the collaboration amongst buyers to address the information asymmetry, mitigate its effects, and boost their negotiating power. Third, to guarantee a robust regulatory ecosystem, which gives us medicines with proven added therapeutic value. Fourth, to invest into new de-linked approaches and non-market-based solutions for the development of new antibiotics to mitigate the devastating consequences of antibiotic resistance. And lastly, to identify policy solutions to prevent or mitigate the impact of medicines shortages and to increase supply chain security. The WHO Europe, we believe, is in a unique position to foster this dialogue, to reach a new social contract with pharmaceutical companies, and we will be happy to support you in this critical mission. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention and for the opportunity to share IFA's views. And back to you, Arne-Peter.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sokolovic, for reminding us that transparency and equity must be at the heart of our efforts. Dr. Giraud, how do you at European Commission address the issue of sustainable access and of innovation for high-cost medicines in the EU pharmaceutical industry? Dr. Giraud, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, very good. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you very much to the colleagues in the regional office and to the Norwegian colleagues to invite the European Commission to join this very important discussion indeed, where we have, in the context of the EU, started also to develop a certain number of actions that are very complementary to what is happening through this Oslo initiative. So what I want to refer to is tell you a little bit how we are developing together with the member states of the European Union in the context of the European Union with the specificity of the European Union, what we call an affordability agenda under the pharmaceutical strategy for Europe. The pharmaceutical strategy for Europe was adopted by the Commission at the end of 2020 with the ambition to adopt a very holistic approach in the way that we look at the future of this policy area and the way we mobilize EU-level instruments, regulatory ones, but also non-legislative ones, in a way that we address the different challenges of this policy area, which we often summarize around a few words: availability, access, or accessibility, and also affordability. So the focus of today is very much on affordability. When it comes to the diagnosis that we are making and that we're making in this document I referred to, there is certainly very much similarity with a lot of what has already been said today from the different countries, the experience. It's clear that both from a public perspective, so a public finance perspective, but also from a household perspective, the affordability of medicine has had more and more implications, and that this poses growing challenges to the majority of the EU member states, and of course beyond in Europe. The business model that has moved from selling blockbusters to marketing niche busters, and that has consequences. New products are priced even higher and higher, with sometimes growing uncertainty as to their real-life effectiveness and the related overall costs. This puts the budgetary sustainability of health systems at risk and reduces the possibilities for patients to have access to these medicines, especially in certain countries where the products are actually not even put on the market. We also heard, and this is also something that we point out, the lack of transparency in terms of costing, in terms of pricing, and some greater clarity that is needed for a proper policy debate and for a fair return of the research contribution that often is coming from public money. Some changing business models, novel payment approaches are important in that context, and would need to be further studied and discussed to ensure that they can positively affect the affordability of new medicines. So what are we saying on the basis of that diagnosis? We're saying that in the EU, we have different ways to mobilize our forces. The first obvious one is the regulatory capacities that we have and the regulatory framework that exists in the EU internal market. So one key aspect of this policy document we published at the end of last year is to say that we're going to address the aspects of the legislation and of the regulatory framework that actually impede the competitive functioning of the market and to take into account the market effects impacting affordability. So that would lead to taking into account the relationship with intellectual property right, the system of incentives and obligation, with a view to support innovation access, but also very much the affordability of medicines. And we also think that there is a potential through the regulatory provisions to address some market competition considerations and then thus further improve, in particular, access to generic and biosimilar medicines. But it's not only through the regulatory capacities that we want to act, we also want to act through developing further cooperation and increasing cooperation between the member states. Member states, of course, remain very much in charge of this policy area, which to a large extent is very national because of the diversity of the health systems and the way pricing and reimbursement is organized at national level. However, we believe that there is a real potential for the EU member states to be cooperating together, discussing, exchanging, learning from each other, developing common projects. And this is very much what we want to offer them the possibility to do. So also some financial support that will be coming from the EU for health and different types of cooperation that we want to put in place. This is why, together with the EU presidencies, the different countries that are holding the presidencies in the coming years, we've put together an agenda for very concrete actions and that are being developed in what we call the group of national competent authorities for pricing and reimbursement and public health payers. And through this group and an agenda that they have set, we want to develop and engage in implementing non-legislative measures to improve transparency, to develop guidelines, to exchange on best practices. And the areas we're looking at, I mean, there are many areas, but just to give you a few examples, I already mentioned working on R&D cost, but we want also to look at how to optimize the functioning of novel pricing and payment models. We'd like to reinforce the way payers can be part of early conversations and that the way that authorization or the bodies in charge of authorization and the so-called regulators, the HTA bodies and the payers can be working together in a much streamlined way across the life cycle of the product and the market entry process. So a series of issues like that we are now putting in place for different sorts of instruments, workshops, documents, studies, and best practice exchanges that we will want to take forward as part of this. So you can, from what I'm saying, I guess that you can well understand that we're very much looking forward to also receive data, information, and any deliverables that will be made available from the Oslo initiative, and that could be useful also to cross-fertilize this process I just described in the EU context. Thank you very much.
We don't hear Arne Petter.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Dr. Grodd, for sharing with us how your thoughts are on balance on access and innovation in the European Union. We have received some insightful comments, questions, and proposals from the floor. We will try to address them as many as we can with the time remaining. And I kindly would ask you, the panelists, to be brief in their response. Natasha and I will be sharing the questions, and I will ask Natasha to post the first one, please.
So we have the first question. I hope you can see it. How does the panel observe the EU pharmaceutical strategy and its ambitions related to high-priced innovative medicines? And I know that Sylvain has already touched upon this. So perhaps I could ask Nathalie from the industry perspective to respond, followed by any of the other panelists who might wish to add their comments. Can I start with you, Nathalie?
Thank you very much, Natasha, and thank you for all the really insightful presentations that were very dense in information. I think just similarly to the WHO Oslo Medicines Initiative, industry has been really looking forward to the pharmaceutical strategy, because it's not a secret to anybody that we need to evolve our systems to be able to cater for these new innovative medicines and the transformations that they cause. And so that the healthcare systems also need to be transformed. Just to be brief, I think that it's difficult, of course, for a supranational organization like the Commission to manage something that is so very national, like prices, and to contribute to the discussion. But the role that certainly the Commission can play, as Sylvain was mentioning, is to gather the stakeholders and organize a conversation that is fact-based on what the barriers are, and then try to encourage us to work on solutions that really target the issues so that we can make progress rather than just present our positions, which is really not helpful for patients at all. So that sort of creating fora for conversation between stakeholders on fact-based barriers, for me, is something that we really hope the pharmaceutical strategy can achieve, and we're willing, as I mentioned before, to contribute beyond what we already have done in terms of fact-based and ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathalie. I don't know, perhaps Bjørn Inge, would you like to comment on this question before we move to the next one, or anyone else? Bjørn Inge.
Thank you, Dr. Muscat. So yes, I will be happy to comment. Of course, I think it's going to be a good thing for all countries in the World Health Organization European region that the EU is working on a pharmaceutical strategy. They have a lot of insight. They have a lot of countries that are big pharmaceutical exporters and producers, and they have countries more like Norway, like Slovenia, that are modestly large countries and that are being troubled by high prices in and reduced access in the pharmaceutical market, and the Europe, of course, the World Health Organization European region also have countries that have much wider difficulties in getting access to larger groups of medicines, and that have a lot of needs that they need to take care of. So we are very positive to the work that's happening in the European Union, and we are sure that we will also benefit from that. And I guess the approach of partly regulating, partly bringing countries together to learn from each other will work well together, I think, with the approach that we are trying to do, which is to have very open and frank dialogue with all the partners in this market, the patients, the professional organizations, not least the industry, and the countries responsible for bringing healthcare to their patients. So we are encouraged by the work happening in the EU, and we hope to work closely together with the EU on this moving forward towards the meeting in Oslo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see that other panelists would like to come in. So I would like to give the floor to Milka, followed by Momir.
Thank you, Natasha. Well, just very shortly from our side, I would say that on behalf of IFA and our members, we welcome the new pharmaceutical strategy as a clear roadmap. And I would just add that the actions that we listed in the speech should be the priorities. And I would just then use this opportunity to ask another question. And that is one for our Norwegian co-hosts, maybe to Dr. Larsen while he's still in the office, that touches on the WHA resolution that I have mentioned in my speech as well. So the question is, how can we bring on board countries that did not support the WHO transparency resolution? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. Shall we just perhaps, Dr. Larsen, take Momir, and then I can come to you to answer that question. Momir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. So going back to the pharmaceutical strategy, we all expect a lot from pharmaceutical strategy in Europe. And as you've seen, there are so many different initiatives, activities ongoing, and I'm sure we will deliver on so many of those aspects. And I think we need to work together with the EMA, national authorities, and stakeholders towards transparent and robust criteria for marketing authorization. And we need to ensure entering all medicines entering the EU market are safe and at the same time bring significant clinical benefit to patients compared to the existing treatment. So we need to start talk about what is clinical meaningful outcome. And in addition, to ensure incentives like orphan designations and related other patent protection are transparent and not misused. So hopefully we'll manage to achieve many of those actions within the pharmaceutical strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So perhaps we can take the question that was posed earlier. Norway, Bjørn Inge, can I come to you?
Yes, thank you. So, and thank you very much to Aoife for the question. So I think we need to go back to the transparency resolution and maybe recognize that the transparency resolution, which was a milestone resolution, it did go very far and taking the discussion to a new level in a very short time. And I think that some of the countries, no countries blocked the resolution. Some countries disassociated themselves with the resolution, which is in a way saying that we do not support this resolution, but we're not blocking it. And I think some of those countries are major pharmaceutical producing countries. I can understand that they need time to understand exactly how to approach the debate on transparency and how to approach the debate on access. I think the way that we will work with these countries, at least I hope the way we will work with these countries, is the same as we do with all the other stakeholders, through dialogue. We need to understand better what are actually the thinking and the ideas of those major countries that disassociated themselves, so that we understand better exactly what are their positions. And I think so this is a complex, the pharmaceutical market is a complex market. The situation of countries is quite different. And I think we need to understand each other better if we are to move forward. So I guess that will be the approach of us. We will wish to invite them into this dialogue with other countries that has other perspectives, and with industry and with patients and others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So back to Anne-Peter.
Yeah, thank you. We have still some time with for a question or two. In the meanwhile, we have gotten one. What lessons would you say we have learned from new approaches through COVID-19? So maybe may I ask Dr. Sylvain Guiraud, could you maybe give some reflections on that questions?
Thank you very much. I guess that what I would say is what has already been said by some of the speakers. I mean, clearly, the experience we collectively had with the joint buying or joint procurement of vaccines has been a very interesting one, I would say the least, to say the least. And in the terms we've been able in the EU to answer and address the particularly difficult situation we were facing. And from this experience, there is certainly an important number of lessons to learn and to think in the way we can use the procurement tool, not only between countries, but also within each of the countries to deliver and include a certain number of criteria in these procurements in terms of security of supply, but also maybe other important criteria that are important for public authorities, and join, combining the role that procurement processes play in terms of affordability, in terms of fair pricing, but also in terms of security of supply and certainty of delivery of contracts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anderson, will you like to comment on these questions?
Thank you. I think there is one more lesson to be learned from the COVID crisis, and that is that we can actually do it. That there is the potential to really take giant leaps forward and tackling very difficult health issues with modern technologies and get to the point where we can actually manage something as undescribed as a COVID crisis in less than a year. It's fantastic. And I think we could actually set the ambition that we could do the same for many, many more diseases, which may not pose the same kind of economic challenge to societies in general, but which for the individual really constitutes an enormous challenge to health and welfare.
Thank you very much. We have a last comment now from Dr. Larsen, Norway, please.
Thank you, Arne Petter. So I might not have said that in my initial statement, but of course, I think we, just like Terkel Andersen just was doing, I think we need to credit the pharmaceutical industry for their competence and their innovative power that they have shown during this pandemic, and I think it's important also to say that however we move forward, we need to make sure that we don't lose that power of this industry. That's a good thing. I think also it is very interesting that during the pandemic we actually worked with the industry in a totally different way that we have ever done before. We covered costs for the industry to be able to do and willing to do their testing and build their production capacity, while they still were not sure that they had a product to produce or sell. And I think this mode of working with the industry to achieve big targets, I guess maybe was Andersen also was reflecting on that we need to consider if that is also something that we could do in specific areas going forward. So, but actually, just that mode of operandum is maybe not the focus of our initiative, coming to the affordability of industry-initiated and developed products, where the availability, accessibility, affordability, and real access for the patient groups is the focus, and where I think we need to find some kind of a new agreement with the industry on how we assure that everyone that can benefit from what is developed, and that's good, actually get into use to the patient that need it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bjørn Inge. Natalie, excuse me, Natasha, we have time for one more question. Will you post it, please?
Yes, there's a very interesting question that has come up from the International Association for Hospice and Palliative Care, who are saying they are particularly concerned about access to affordable, controlled medicines for palliative care, which are unavailable in many countries of the Euro region. Would any of our panelists like to comment about this? And I know that Slovenia has taken a particular interest in cancer drugs. So I wonder whether perhaps Momir would like to say something about palliative care and cancer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So oncology is definitely the disease area that is very challenging as we're getting older. Current statistics says that 1 in 3 will get it, and for today's born child, it will be even 1 in 2. And palliative care is definitely one of the areas that we all need to improve. And I think basic access to those medicines needs to be maintained, because these are usually off the patent medicines, and sometimes we achieve low volumes here. So we need to try to find different solutions to have this access. So Silvan was mentioning joint procurements, and even if we have shortages on different levels, and if this is a public threat, maybe we should also do a joint shortage for palliative medicine, see if this is a threat in many countries. Of course, this is a national decision. This can be on voluntary basis, but I think we need to look for the joint solutions that the European Health Union is now every day on our agenda, and we cannot make it happen if we want to look beyond the subsidiarity principles, so to take health as one of our main priorities. So I would fully support that palliative medicine should maintain good access, because from the patient perspective, you cannot evaluate how the delirium looks like, and I would really have full support here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Momir, for this last comment. I'm sure that Natasha will join me to thank you all for a pleasant session. It has been a pleasure to share this afternoon. And by this, I'm handing over the floor to the Regional Director, Dr. Hans Kluge, to closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arne Peter and Natasha, for co-chairing. I would say in a session which is innovative in itself, and thank you everyone for participating. So let us remind that universal health coverage is the first core priority of the EPW, the European Programme of Work. And access is one of the 3 core UHC pillars, along with quality and financial protection. As we heard in the session, we still have a bit of work to do to improve access to high-cost novel therapeutics. And you remember that Sustainable Development Goals should be achieved by 2030. So the time is pressing. It requires that all stakeholders come together to work out a model which will allow for a balance between equitable access and innovation. But this is not a challenge to any of us alone. This is a challenge for all of us. So we really need to join the efforts here and come up with a solution in a win-win situation. WHO, as the neutral convener of the Oslo Medicines Initiative, will continue to offer a safe forum for discussion amongst the stakeholders and partners, and we look forward to a consensus for the way forward. We invite all of you to join our webinars, which will start in October, and which will be focused on the more technical topics related to access to medicines. And we shall be glad to hear from you during the discussions, and do not hesitate to be in touch, because this has to be co-owned by all of us. Early next year then, there will be some more consultations, and let's put in our agenda 14 and 15 June 2022, the political conference in Oslo. Before I close, I would like to thank our speakers for the passion and commitment. I thank you for being frank and respectful about the issues, but I'm especially heartened to hear discussion of potential solutions. And thanks to the audience for excellent questions and comments. Stay safe and goodbye.